Eddie Brock has become a god, the true King in Black. Welcome to the Comicstorian Complete Story Series, where we take trade paperbacks in single issues and we break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then we read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. After becoming the King in Black, Eddie found himself traveling through time and space, seeing different versions of himself in the same timeline. In the current time, Dylan was in possession of the main Venom symbiote and was starting to run into some problems. And so, Eddie is going to use his powers to help his son. This is Al Ewing's Venom, issues number 17, 18, 19, and 20. This was a story that Benny was covering for YouTube members earlier this year, but had not yet made it public for everyone, so it is older. But here you go, and I hope you enjoy, because I know he would have wanted everyone to see it.
Eddie tumbles downward, or upwards, depending on your perspective. He has been launched into Limbo. After helping and being betrayed by the likes of Madeline Pryor and Meredith, he now slams into the ground, his memories lost. What emerges is known as Bedlam, all of Eddie's bottled rage made by symbiotes in his own mental state. Bedlam roars in anger, anger that he doesn't even remember now. And the creatures of Limbo respond. Techno-demons, one of the creatures of Limbo. "What a monster! His life glow will last us weeks!" One of them laughs in triumph. The creature reaches out for Bedlam, but the monster grabs him by the arm, smashing him into a nearby rock. And he smiles maliciously, looking at the other demons. "Who's next?" The monsters just laugh. "Ha! The lunk doesn't even know what he just did!" All it takes is a touch to transmit the transmode virus. The demons laugh. Bedlam looks at his hands in shock as the virus begins to take over his body, transforming his skin into wires and circuits. But Bedlam is Eddie Brock, the King in Black, the Lord of the Symbiotes, and the King in Black does not fall. He roars in anger, and by sheer force of will, the technovirus is purged out of his body. The demons stare in shock, not sure how this just happened. One of them turns to fly away, leaving his buddy behind as Bedlam reaches out, pulling him in close. "Tasty!" Bedlam growls as he bites into the demon's head, throwing it away. He turns as a voice calls to him from above. "Dear Lord, what are you?" Darkoth, the death demon, ruler of Limbo, states. The mighty ruler lifts his soul sword as Bedlam steps forward, the rage-filled symbiote suddenly rushing at him. "Crack your skull! Eat your brains!" he bellows, but this is Limbo and reality can split depending on fate's hand in the outcome. In one reality, Darkoth raises his soul sword, but Bedlam fires a strand of symbiote, pulling the sword from the ruler's hands. Where's your sword now, little man?" Bedlam asks as he takes the blade, snapping it in half. He then rushes forward, stabbing the ruler in his head. "Stupid grape man!" Bedlam yells as he rips Darkoth's head out of his body, dropping it to the ground when suddenly a portal opens up behind him. Bedlam turns to see his past selves from the Garden of Time. Anger fills Bedlam as he leaps through the portal, preparing to punch his past selves and start the cycle that leads him to Limbo all over again. Darkoth plunges his blade into the monster's chest. The symbiote explodes, leaving nothing but a smoking skeleton in its place. The symbiote goo splashes everywhere, covering Darkoth and beginning to possess him. Darkoth whirls, leaping through a strange portal that opens up. Who's to say which of these outcomes is predestined? A hand explodes in the black sea of symbiotes, and Eddie Brock pulls himself to the surface, a voice speaking out to him. "Eddie Brock, you walk the path of the magician," it says, and Eddie looks into the darkness, the memory of his name returning to him. "I barely remember. To get here, so much was taken from me," Eddie says as the light appears in the darkness. The voice speaks again, explaining that this is the way of the magician's journey. That it is the sacrifice of the ego. That magic comes in too many forms. One is white magic and one remakes the world from a place above. The other is black magic, which works in the world knowing suffering. Leaving hands black with blood, heavy with venom, the voice says. Eddie looks up as a black hand appears before him, its finger burning as if it's a candle. Eddie looks up at the symbiote hand as it continues to speak to him, explaining that he is in the unbeyond. The true home of the King in Black. But this is not a throne room, Eddie. It is an engine room. It's where we do the work, the hand says, and the room lights up to reveal to Eddie a vast machine powered by an explosive engine. The room darkens once more as the hand continues to speak. So tell me the work that needs doing. Tell me what road led you here. Ask me your questions. The memory appears once more in Eddie's mind, and he asks about his son. Interesting. Your thoughts immediately turn to Dylan. The hand notes, the hand revealing that Dylan is safe, that he is growing stronger as he is bonded with Venom and is currently fighting against Norman Osborn. Eddie asks his second question. Meredith, he's why I'm here. What do I need to do to stop him? Don't waste this. You've known the answer all along. The hand states, and Eddie nods, his mind clearing as he realizes the truth. I need my mother and my son. I need Venom. He says quietly, and Eddie's mind continues to clear as he explains how he would become Meredith in the future. When he became the King in Black, he tried to turn the symbiotes into his army, to use them to protect the galaxy and make up for what Null did. This thought is what led Eddie to becoming Meredith, that he destroyed every Clintar's mind so that they could serve him better. Was that really some madness taking over, or was it just the logical end of the path I started us on? Eddie says softly, looking at his hands and asking another question. What is the King in Black for? The hand reveals that the King in Black is merely another side of the magician, that the Beyonders are the King in White, ruling from above and altering the world as they see fit. The King in Black is the opposite, bound by the world. Working not through the clean, precise energies of concordance, but through organic matter, the wet, messy goo, working with the universe in symbiosis, the hand says, and the hand points to Eddie, explaining that it is work to keep the plane of existence on track. Or give up and embrace the eternal end. Like Null, Eddie whispers, the hand explaining that Null has given up and wished for nothing but the darkness to overtake the universe, that he was given the same choice as Eddie. Eddie rages against the hand, stating that it isn't fair, that he shouldn't be asked to do this, that he isn't capable of this. Null said the same thing. Should have been Spider-Man, Eddie whispers, the hand continuing to point at him. Spider-Man was born for this role, but life happened and he's not here, and you are. So Eddie asks his fourth question. Who are you? He asks the hand, and eyes appear behind the hand, the eyes of Venom. I'm you, Eddie Brock, but I'm so much more than that. Call me the Eventuality, the hand states, and it reveals that the timeline of the King in Black is complicated. That when Eddie took the throne and its power, he became unstuck in time. His path began to fork again and again. You will travel back and forth, hither and yon, restless, rootless, into the forgotten past and the possible futures. You'll lose power, you'll regain it, you'll lose it again. That will happen, and it won't. Already did and already didn't. The hand explains, telling Eddie that it can see all the paths, and every single one of them leads to me. When your work in the world is finally done, you will come here to supervise. What causes you? Eddie asks in bewilderment. He understands that he'll eventually become this, but doesn't understand what he is now. That his body is gone and he is made up of the remnants of symbiotes, but he feels real. He points at his destroyed eye, pointing out that he can feel pain. He suddenly screams, clutching the wound. You've got the power in you to save your son, to save your other, maybe save everything that is, if you just let yourself see it, the hand states, and Eddie stands back up, his eye having regrown. Eddie finally sees it. I have to fix what's broken. I have to fix myself. So I'm going in, and I'm gonna kick my own ass! Venom snarls as he turns away from the hand, the Venom symbol appearing on his chest. Eddie Brock just acquired the last Venom symbiote, but somewhere else in time and space, Normie walks into his bedroom of the Oscorp residence in New York. He ignores the voice calling out to him from underneath the bed, but can't ignore the knocking at his window. He looks up to see Venom waving at him. Hey Normie, let me in, Dylan says as Venom, his voice a mixture of the symbiote and the childlike Dylan Brock. But Normie waves him off, telling him that he has a Sunday dinner with his grandfather and can't hang out with Dylan. Dylan ignores this, using his symbiote to pick the lock. "Where's your symbiote, Red Goblin?" Venom asks, and Normie points underneath the bed where they can see the symbiote's red eyes watching them. "Are you guys getting along?" Dylan asks. "I guess," Normie sighs, but they're interrupted by the voice of Norman Osborn as the door suddenly opens up and the former villain enters. Dylan stands in the room with Normie. "I didn't realize you had a friend over," Norman Osborn says through the doorway. Dylan nods, explaining that they're friends from school and that he needed some help with his homework. Norman smiles, offering the young man to share their Sunday meal with them. Knowing Norman's history as the Green Goblin, though, Dylan is shocked by the kindness that the man is offering. But he doesn't hesitate to subtly point out the villain's past. Things get a little awkward and tense, but Norman decides to put on some music. That's when the news breaks through the music, letting them know that a villain known as Slide is robbing an armored car. Norman puts down his fork and knife, standing up. "You'll have to excuse me, I'm sure this won't take but a moment," Norman says as he walks out of the room. Moments later, he's flying over the city as the Gold Goblin. Dylan pushes away from the table, transforming into Venom, ignoring his friend's request that he leave the dinner now and leave Norman alone. In the city, Slide is moving through the streets at a quick pace, his feet literally sliding on the pavement. The police order him to stop, but he merely throws himself down, sliding underneath their roadblock. "He slid under us!" one of the cops shouts. "Observant types, these big city cops! Ha ha ha!" Slide laughs, but a glowing pink ball suddenly hits him in the chest, exploding, covering him in pink goo, stopping him from moving any further. Slide looks up to see the Gold Goblin hovering over him. "Looks like Oscorp's latest adhesive beats even your non-stick coating, Slide," Norman points out, proud that it's even better than Spider-Man's webbing. But Norman turns as he senses movement behind him, and he turns just as Venom swings through the air, kicking him in the back. "Norman, we hear you want to do the right thing. Compensate for all the wrong things." Venom growls as he grabs a hold of Norman, carrying him to the nearby rooftop. Norman Osborn tries to hit the symbiote with a stun bomb, but it has no effect. "Tickles! Don't worry, Norm. We're here to help. We'll show you an easier way to atone for all of your victims. Just fall a mile in their shoes." Venom shouts as he flings Norman off the rooftop. Norman tumbles through the air, but he calls out to his glider to catch him. He then steers the glider away, knowing that he needs to put distance between him and Venom, but a web line snags the glider. "Going somewhere?" Venom asks as he yanks Norman back, swinging him into a wall. Norman tries to struggle to his feet as Venom stalks towards him. "You're dead, Norman! You hear me? You're a dead man!" Venom bellows as he hits Norman again and again, cracking his Gold Goblin mask, but Norman starts to laugh as Venom lifts him into the air. "What's the joke, Norman?" Venom asks, pausing his beating, and Norman looks at him, one of his eyes visible through the shattered mask. "I know I deserve this. I always thought it would be Spider-Man," Norman gasps. He looks at Venom, explaining that he can tell by the way the symbiote moves that he is not Eddie Brock, or even Flash Thompson. "I must have hurt you, somehow, to earn this. I must have cut you to the heart," he gasps, sadness in his eyes. Venom prepares to stab the former villain, but Dylan orders him to stop, dropping the goblin to the ground. "You're the boss," Venom growls at Dylan. Norman coughs, struggling to stand. "Not me, then? Glad I could help you work through this." Venom looks back over his shoulder at Goblin. "Yeah, good session, Osborn. We'll make another appointment real soon." But what Venom doesn't realize is that their battle caused some damage to a nearby building. Inside the building, a pipe is broken, and that pipe is carrying liquid nitrogen to a stasis tank. And that stasis tank is now holding something that is breaking free. In the Adcent Throne laboratory, the scientists are working on the skeleton of Eddie Brock, trying to test if there are any remnants of symbiote DNA left on the bones. But the lead scientist insists that the bones are plain. "The only thing slightly special about these relics is that they once belonged to Eddie Brock," he insists. But the bones suddenly explode as liquid fills the room, swirling around them, taking the form of Eddie Brock as he stands punching the scientist in the face. The assistant backs up in terror, hitting the alarm button, slamming the doors shut and locking them inside. "There's no way out! Nothing can be gained from hurting me!" the assistant shouts as the newly formed Eddie Brock steps off of the examination table, naked. "I believe you," Eddie says as he walks to the door, turning off the pain receptors in his new symbiote body, using all of his strength to tear the door off of its hinges. You'd be surprised what a human symbiote can do, Eddie says over his shoulder as he walks out of the room, leaving the assistant stunned. Eddie continues to move through the facility, avoiding the heavily armed security guards as he makes his way outside. At the edge of the complex grounds, a guard is talking to a biker, ordering the young man to turn around as the area has been locked down. But a strained symbiote grabs the guard from behind, yanking him into the woods. Eddie steps out, staring at the young biker. I need your bike. The clothes too, just down to the pants. I'll go commando. The young man looks at him in shock. Holy crap, you're a Terminator? Eddie smiles. If that speeds this up, sure. He suddenly realizes the young man had some white spray paint, as he was looking to tag rail cars down at the rail yard, and Eddie smiles again. Do me a favor, he begins to state. Later, Eddie is roaring on the new bike with his new clothes, the leather jacket now painted with the Venom symbol. Days later, Eddie arrives in Bayswater, where Dylan and Venom once hid for a short time before the Life Foundation found them and shut the place down. Eddie stands outside of the bar that Dylan worked at, stopping by the Hellhounds, who now seem to run the place. When the Life Foundation locked this place down, looking for some alien freak, they made a deal with the people in charge. And in this town, that's the Hellhounds, Lex Drexler says, acting tough and ordering Eddie to leave, but Eddie refuses. Cut his throat, leave him to the rats, Lex snaps. But Eddie sidesteps the attack from behind, grabbing the knife-wielding attacker's arm, breaking it at the elbow. Another moves in to stab him, but Eddie twists, kicking him in the face. He picks up one of the knives, looking back at Lex. You talk a good game, Drexler, but you're not the man in charge. I can smell the man in charge from the next state over, and he's sitting right in that burned-out bar, Eddie says, motioning to the building behind them. The bikers all begin to look worried and whisper about the monster in the building. But Drexler has had enough, drawing out his pistol, aiming it at Eddie, who doesn't flinch. Enough already. You're dead, smart guy, Drexler says, but Eddie throws the knife and it hits Drexler in the hand, forcing him to drop the gun. Eddie stalks forward as Drexler continues to shout, and he picks up the bike, tossing him through the front window before walking quietly to the door. Hey, you wouldn't believe what I had to go through to get here. Had to grow my body back and drive all the way down the coast, deal with the biker trash that you've been lording over, Eddie says as he walks to the shadows in the back of the bar, cracking his neck and his knuckles. Anyway, I'm here now, all warmed up and ready for a real fight. How about you? Eddie asks. And Bedlam, an Eddie from a different period in time, an Eddie that has no memories or empathy or thoughts, an Eddie that is raw, pure rage, leans forward from the pile of bones that he is sitting on, growling. Ready when you are, Eddie Brock!
And there you have it. The crazy adventures of Venom continues. Benny had also covered Venom 21 through 25, and so you should subscribe to the channel for when that comes out as well. Also subscribe as I cover more of the current comics to carry on the legacy. We'll see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.